大家好，香港時間8:49啦，星期三嘅晚上，收睇緊嘅係 Avigdor 世界頻道同埋 Facebook 直播。嗱，呢一節咧，我咧就請嚟一位我嘅朋友啦，佢依家喺耶路撒冷Jerusalem 同我一齊做呢個直擊報導。咁我就會用少少廣東話咧做個 translation， 但係就唔會好多嘅，因為大部分聽我哋嘅節目嘅朋友咧都會係識英文嘅。咁就請嚟嘅咧就係 Avigdor Mevorach。咁 Avigdor 咧就同我咧喺早幾個月之前就都傾過關於以色列呢個族群啦。咁但係今日我哋就會係圍繞住即係呢個 attack 嘅事情。So it's a pleasure to have my friend Avigdor to appearing at Avigdor. It's our second time doing the show.
Yes.
But this is a more serious talk, Avigdor, as we all know what happened on Saturday, just a few days ago. It was an attack near the southern part of Israel. So the attack got a lot of missiles, over 5,000, and then there was some sort of a beach party. People got kidnapped, and then we saw it globally. Now, I guess I'll do a little bit of translation, but not word by word. Most of our speakers, they speak English. Maybe first of all, I want to ask you why did this happen? Because we know the conflict between the Palestinians and Israel. It's an ongoing thing through thousands of years of conflict. But this is more than surreal to see. The imagery is brutal and all that. But why did this sudden attack happen? And Netanyahu called this like a 911 incident. But why did it happen?
Okay. So, by the way, do you hear an echo or not?
It's okay. It's okay now.
Okay. So first of all, before we go into the why, we have to explain the what. What is going on now in Israel? Israel is facing the biggest crisis since its establishment in 1948, and the atrocities are similar to the ones done by the Nazi regime. The casualties inflicted upon Israel were not seen since the Holocaust. And what I mean by this is that over 1,200 murdered in one day, while most of them are civilians. Families were massacred, women, children, babies. We have over 200 taken captive. Again, women, children, elderly. Some Holocaust survivors are also taken to captive by the Hamas. 5,000 missiles were shot upon all of Israel, trying to kill Israelis as much as possible. Israel is in a state of war. This is what is happening now in Israel, okay? Now, when we want to understand why this happened, okay? So there are basically two aspects.
Right.
One is a tactical failure, which I am not a tactician. I'm not an army person. It's hard for me to explain why this tactical failure happened, but Israel was not prepared for such an assault. But the second is a much more imminent reason, and it's a strategic failure. And I will explain this slowly by slowly. Sorry. The Israeli society obeys the European naive perception on the Middle East since the last 30 years. It's a gradual process since the 1993 Oslo Accords. Now, what happens is that the enemies surrounding Israel sense that Israeli hands are tied, and basically the Israeli military, the IDF, cannot really retaliate to terror attacks. An ongoing process of this kind of hand tying of the IDF and the Israeli military services basically led to a decline in the Israeli deterrence since the Oslo Accords in 1993. As it seems, we are in the Middle East, and we are playing with European rules. Well, the enemy does not go by the or Geneva Conventions. They go by the brutal conventions as we see it in the news in the last few days. So this is what happened, okay? And there are additional reasons for this. Of course, the political rift in Israel also added on to this. If you want to delve into that, so for sure, I could explain more.
No, but let's go back when you say the defense mechanism, because this whatever dome, like when they
the Iron Dome, yeah,
the Iron Dome, right? People from the outside world think that the defense mechanism is great, so nothing can penetrate. So it's not foolproof. In other words, when they have 5,000 ballistic missiles, coming
that's
out
correct
at once.
That's correct. When you have 5,000 missiles shot over the population in such a vast amount of land and people, the Iron Dome has its limitations. Without the Iron Dome, we would have been now with dozen times more casualties. So thank the IDF for having the Iron Dome, but nevertheless, as you said, it's not 100% proof, and as you see, the casualties are outrageous.
Now, we don't have to go through like point by point, just but go a little bit off tangent. But who is behind this? I think Iran, right, admitted they are backing this. We read it in the news. But the so-called axis of evil, of course, this is all theory. Now, there's a Ukraine war going on with Russia. And then if the so-called axis of evil, they started different wars, right? These leaders, it benefit them individually to make them more, I don't know, like the ruling will be more stable, right? Some people think about Korea. Some people think about, Russia, maybe a little bit on China. I don't know. Who is a big manufacturer of a drone, and also, of course, Iran. They call it the four axis of evil, right?
So I could relate to our area, to our neighborhood, quote unquote.
Let's say Iran and
Iran. So Iran is basically backing up the Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hezbollah militants in Syria, and they're trying to penetrate also the Palestinian society in Judea and Samaria. And of course, in the international arena, they will also try to assault any Jewish or Israeli person or entity. And they're doing this when the world is keeping quiet, just as they did in 1940s when the Nazis basically massacred millions of Jews and the world kept quiet. Well, the world kept quiet in the last 20 years, leading Iran to its power today, and God forbid they become into a nuclear power. They will not stop in this little area. They will continue to attack all the free Western world. And this is something that the Western world, for some reason, does not want to understand. This situation we're in is just the beginning. If we don't stop this Iran axis, as you call it, it will continue to the whole world. Don't think not. That's the situation.
Okay, so let's say, but they admit, they are backing up Hamas. Hamas is like, I don't know, it's kind of a loose guerrilla group, right?
No. Hamas is a big militant group, which is much more fierce than ISIS. The atrocities they did to the 1,200 murdered during Saturday, the things that they did there, I don't want to repeat it now out loud, but I'm sure everybody could go to the social medias and to the papers. The atrocities they did to women, children, and elderly people, Holocaust survivors, It's much worse than what ISIS did. We're dealing with a magnitude much higher than ISIS, and Israel has to eradicate and basically annihilate all of Hamas in the Gaza Strip or anywhere they are around the world.
So the destruction is done all within a few hours. I mean, like, because this is like very sudden, right? Very abrupt.
Yeah, this
All in a matter of
happened.
Hours.
Yeah, this was done while Israel was in one of its high holidays.
Yeah,
Simchat Torah, and they basically took that to an advantage. There was a very big festival concert in the south with thousands of civilians having a social and cultural event, and they basically massacred whoever was there. I mean, I heard from firsthand of witnesses of what was going on there. It's horrendous. It's horrendous.
Now, during my time in Israel, which is quite many years ago, I have a feeling that at that time, Palestine, which is inside the Israel state, of course, there was conflict even in the West Bank where you are now, like Jerusalem, but it was not as bad. But go to the kind of the last question that we prepared, but this is not the last question I'm going to ask. A lot of Palestinians actually they are not terrorists. I mean, I went to Israel for my biblical mission, Christian missionary trip. Visit both the Israel side and also the Palestinian side, and then the people I talk to, they want peace, and this is also deeply rooted in what is mentioned in the Bible, which Jewish people, they don't consider Jesus as the savior, but that's a different issue. But so many different religions, Islam, Jewish, and Christian, they coexist in harmony for as much as possible, as much as they want it. But what about people in the West Bank, the Palestinians there? And if, just like Netanyahu talked about, they need to kind of, I think, denotatively, that means to wipe out the terrorists in Gaza. What happened to the Palestinians? They are like 2-3 million people living in a very crowded area. How would the refugee? How do we deal with the refugee situation? First, we have to those who are the bad guys. That's
okay.
what I'd like to ask.
So first of all, we have to differentiate between Judea and Samaria and Gaza. Judea and Samaria, the Palestinian Authority is not Hamas. I'm not saying that they're saints and angels, but they're
ordinary people. Yeah,
it's a system that we could have a dialogue and somehow to reach all kinds of agreements. It's far from being peace, but there is some kinds of status quo between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government.
Right.
But the Hamas is trying to penetrate and overturn the Palestinian Authority, and that's one of the risks that we have in this current crisis. I mean, we cannot forget that the Hamas threw out the Palestinian Authority in 2006 from Gaza. They basically massacred the Palestinian Authority politicians and military, and basically took over by force the Gaza Strip. And this is what the Palestinian society in Gaza most likely wanted. They wanted this Hamas regime. So that's why we have to separate between these two societies.
Okay. Do they have like two different governments, so to speak?
Yes.
Gaza is run by the Hamas, and then West Bank, the PLO, right?
Right. No, it's not the PLO, it's the Palestinian Authority, but they're backed by the PLO. That's correct.
Okay. Because I remember the time when Arafat was still alive. Things look okay. He likes to talk, right? That was many years ago. Arafat, right?
Yeah.
People like him, some people hate him, but different issue.
That's a different issue for this history books.
Yeah, right. Okay, so how do people from the West Bank, the Palestinian government, do they support or do they condemn what Hamas did? I mean, in general.
Well, unfortunately, they support the destruction of Israel. This is the bare truth. Nevertheless, as I said, there are common interests between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli government to ensure that the Hamas doesn't do the same to the Judean Samaria area, just as they did in the Gaza Strip. In my perspective, I mean, there are other point of views, but a strong Palestinian Authority, which basically has some kind of status quo with the Israeli government, can sustain the situation as is, and will have to deal with the conflict as time goes with all its ups and downs. But if there's going to be a weak Palestinian Authority, the vacuum will basically draw in all of the Hamas powers to Judea and Samaria, and the same thing will happen, and it might be even much worse than what's going on now in Gaza. So this is a very, very tough situation, to basically make sure that all Hamas is uprooted from Judea and Samaria, just as it's going to be uprooted from Gaza.
How big is the Hamas, well, should I call it a terrorist group? How big are they?
They're quite big. I don't have the numbers, but I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find out.
Yeah, maybe even 6 digit. Yeah,
I'm not going to throw out numbers.
Yeah,
they're a vicious movement, which is basically using its civilians as hostages. They're causing death and hunger and atrocities upon their own people. They're shooting missiles from hospitals. And this is what Israel needs to deal with. Okay, and as we've seen in the last few days, their brutality exceeds any acceptable understanding. It's something which can never, ever be accepted. And this is what Israel is doing now. They're going to demolish all the Hamas movement from the Gaza Strip.
How can the civilians leave Gaza? Would they go to Egypt or would they go to Israel? How can we do the background check of each civilian? Because honestly, they are all living inside the Israel state, right?
They live in the Gaza Strip, which is not the Israeli state. Israel retreated from Gaza in 2005, and basically the Hamas took over in 2006, and basically they're running the show, the brutal show in the Gaza Strip. So Israel is not the authority in the Gaza Strip. But to answer your question,
okay,
what I'm going to say now is harsh, and I don't think I would have said that on Friday last week.
Right.
But the world has changed over the past Saturday. The Palestinians used the United Nations and international institutions for many years to condemn and to basically do everything against the Israeli society and the Israeli government. It doesn't matter who was in the government, if it was the left wing or the right wing. The Palestinians used the United Nations and the international institutions to blemish Israel in any possible way. And unfortunately, the UN all the time took side with the Palestinians. And now it's time for the table to turn. The United Nations, who never stood up for Israel, should start to build new refugee camps in the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt in order to help the thousands of Palestinian refugees that will need the help of the UN and the international institutions. So instead of condemning Israel, they should start taking care of the biggest problem of the Palestinian people, which will start in the next coming days, in their evacuation from the Gaza Strip and their fleeing to Egypt for safety. Unfortunately, this is a harsh thing to say, but it must be said.
Okay, now talking about population-wise, Israel state probably got, I don't know, 7 million Jews living in Israel now.
Israel has 10 million people, which 20% are Israeli Arabs and 80% are Jews. And there's also some Christians and other kind of minorities. All of the Arabs and the other minorities have civil rights, just as the Jews, and show it, so it should stay.
Yeah, I know one person who was from Hong Kong, live in Israel, but she is Jewish. Yeah, because converted. Her husband is Jewish. Then, yeah, she is Jewish. But would that trigger an exodus of Palestinians living inside West Bank to leave too after this incident on Saturday?
Again, this is a very tough question what you're asking. So we have to differentiate again between what's going on in the Gaza Strip, what is the status of the Israeli citizens which are Arab, and the Palestinians which are in Judea and Samaria, or as you call it, the West Bank.
The West Bank.
As long as the Palestinians in the West Bank continue their normal lives, don't deal with terror, don't use brutal force against the Israelis, they could keep on their lives and reach prosperity. I mean, it's up to them. That they have their own area of their own livelihood, and they're free to do that. I mean, I wish that the Palestinian economy will be good and that it should have a good life. I mean, that's what I wish they have. But it's up to them. They have to make a decision. Do they want to be in the free world or they want to be in the terror world? It's simple as that.
What about those that have intermarriage? I mean, I come more from evangelical perspective when I think about these things. I have seen, Palestinians, they have interracial marriage with a Jew, right? So their kids, is half Palestinian and half Jewish. So it's painful for them to see this. And of course, I understand, the pain, I mean, of what's going on, like how Israel became a nation again in 1948 and all that. But
I just want to correct you. Israel became a nation 3,500 years ago. Israel established a sovereign state in 1948. That's something we have to not forget. People forget that, but we're 3,500 years old. We have a heritage of 3,500 years old, not some barely 70 years old of tribes who gathered up as the Palestinian nation. So it's something to put in perspective.
Yeah. And then the Arabs got the so-called Israel state for many years before 1948, right?
Yeah. If we go back to history, so Israel area basically moved from hand to hand to hand to hand. There was never a Palestinian state in Israel. Okay, people should open up history books and learn history, and not the lies which all kinds of people are mentioning in the social media and making falsehoods as truths.
Okay, so now, like I'm now in North America, moving around a bit. To me, it is very easily for Israel to wipe out the terrorists in the Gaza Strip very easy, because you got all the military technology to do so. You could win the war very easily. Depends on what tactics you want. Ground war, airborne stuff.
Thank God we have that, because in 1940 till 1945, the Jews around the world did not have a state. They did not have an IDF, and 6 million Jews were brutally murdered by the Nazi regime. This is exactly what the Hamas and the Hezbollah want to do to us today. If we did not have an IDF with all the powers you just mentioned, don't think twice. That's what would have happened.
So that there will be a lot of casualties. I mean, already a lot of casualties. A few thousand Jewish people, they died, kidnapped. But I foresee there will be more casualties because this is a war, right?
It is a war,
and the Hamas, they definitely will resist, and also they will have backup from Iran, and also I think the other axis of evil behind the scene, my backup. You don't have to answer this, but that's my thinking. So we see the coming months there will be more casualties around Israel area. So that's one thing, and the other thing, it's like you say, refugee camps somewhere, right?
Yes, the UN should wisely start to establish support and refugee camps in the Sinai Peninsula. They unfortunately will need them because the Palestinian civilians, which enjoyed the leadership of a terror movement as Hamas, now are going to pay the price because they let this beast out of its cage, and now it's time to pay the price. No one says that war is something we want to. Israel strives for peace. We say 3 times a day that we want peace in our prayers. It's something embedded in the Jewish culture. Shalom, peace.
Yeah. The Sinai Peninsula, that's Egypt side, right?
That's Egypt, yes.
Yeah.
That's Egypt.
Yeah. We heard there are a lot of underground tunnels connected to Gaza Strip, so that there will be food supplies now. I mean, those who haven't left yet, or maybe they secretly or quietly, they actually move out. I mean, civilians.
Well, the gates to the Sinai Peninsula. Again, I'm not a tactician. I'm not an IDF commander. I'm just a civilian.
Yeah.
But the gates from Gaza to Egypt should be open, and basically Gaza is going to be under severe attack, and it already is under severe attack.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the tunnels. Well, what are the tunnels? The tunnels, basically all the aid given by the West and by Qatar and other regimes, instead of building a prosperity and livelihood in Gaza, building businesses and making it into a tourist area, an economy, they used all the fundings for one thing: to build a terror machine with underground tunnels, which basically that's where all of the Hamas leadership are now. And who is suffering for this? Of course, the Palestinian people, which basically don't get the aid, and they are now in a very, very tough scenario because of this brutal regime called Hamas, which is worse than ISIS.
Okay. You think Israel will take over the Gaza Strip completely?
I don't know. I really don't know. This is going to be a long process, and basically it's something which I'm sure the military leaders of this country have their plans what to do. Days will tell. I really don't know, but
okay.
It's not going to be a walk in the park, let's put it that way.
Okay. Everyone is drafted as in the military before, like yourself, but to go by the playbook, so to speak, there must be some sort of international protocol during the war, right? Let the civilians leave. There should be some corridor for them to, to be evacuated, right? Before, more airstrikes and all that, right?
Well, again, Egypt should get involved and open up the gates.
Yeah.
And whoever wants to leave Gaza should be allowed to leave. I mean, now the Hamas is using civilians as their bases. They're shooting rockets from hospitals. Yes, human shield. They're shooting rockets from schools, from kindergartens, from hospitals. So and on Saturday, the rules of the game have changed. And this is something the Palestinian people around the world need to know, that brutality and massacre of women and children and elderly people and Holocaust survivors is something we cannot accept ever, 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 ever.
Well, let's see whether I call it the axis of evil. We'll use this as a trigger point for something even more evil. I hope not. I hope this war will win swiftly, meaning that not a prolonged war, and hope, justice will be served, first of all. And second thing, it's I hope those who are innocent, they could find refuge and also a safe place, and then just find the bad guys and put them for the deserved punishment, right?
Yeah, we don't want to fight civilians.
Yeah,
we want to basically demolish the Hamas movement from Gaza, and we have to then decide how and what to do. But the continuing status as it was until now cannot continue, and Israel is working on that as we speak in order to retaliate.
Well, all eyes are on Israel now, actually. Yeah, and thank you so much for your time. And if situation kind of changes, escalates in any shape or form, hope you don't mind. I will call you again. Yeah.
There's one thing I would want to add.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we finalize this.
Yes.
One of the reasons that this event happened was because of this dispute in Israel in the last year in the Israeli society. The Israeli society was ripped apart in political issues, internal political issues.
Yeah.
This gave a sense that Israel is not united, and our enemies use that as an advantage against Israel. But they are wrong. Israel is united as one. And when Israel is united as one, nothing could stop us. And we will not stop until there is peace and quiet in this country. And this is for the benefit of the whole Western and free world.
There's no more flight to Tel Aviv right now, and it will resume, I hope, soon. And I think things will be not quite back to normalcy, but do you agree it will be safe to travel to Tel Aviv in weeks, because now Hong Kong stopped the flight?
I hope that yes, but the Prime Minister basically said that this is a long process,
right,
which we're entering to. So I'm not a prophet, though I really respect our prophets, our mutual prophets.
Right.
We both come from similar religions.
Yeah.
But I'm not a prophet, so I don't know what will happen in a few weeks. But I hope things will calm down, and we will continue to be the leading high-tech leader in the world, which this is what we want to do, to make a better world, to make a better free world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Avigdor. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.